Welcome. So today we're starting our series on Robert Macoy's Knights Templar book. It was published back in 1873 by the Masonic Publishing Company, which was a precursor to Macoy, that he started his company. Anyways, it kind of went back and forth in names. But anyway, so today we'll start with part first of the Knights Templar book. And the interesting part about this is Macoy isn't just telling the story of Jesus and the early church. He's laying the foundation stones for a secret chivalric brotherhood. The format we'll use to explore this Knights Templar book is to first examine what Macoy is saying, and then what does it mean for today's Knights Templar. But before we get started, it's pretty important that we have to understand the popularity of the Knights Templar in the later half of the 19th century, and we need some framework on the golden age of fraternalism. It's estimated by the end of the 19th century, between 15 and 25% of all adult males in the United States belonged to at least one secret society. Not all were Freemasons. Other groups included the Oddfellows and the Woodmen, etc. And the reasons why they joined were varied, from social standing, business networks, and even your insurance could be tied to your lodge membership. The Knights Templars, however, occupied a unique pinnacle position. During this time, parades were really popular. John Philip Sousa was kind of like a rock star. And the Knights Templar jumped at this popularity and made sure that they marched in full regalia and through elaborate galas. This is the framework that Masonic authors like Macoy and Pike wrote their Masonic Christian Philosophy. Let's get into the three distinguishing claims that Macoy makes in part first. The first is the Enigma of the Cross. To today's reader, it is challenging to appreciate the dramatic start of this book. Macoy launches us into this disgraceful, indecent, and most barbarous reality of the crucifixion. The claim, he argues, is that to his fellow fishermen, the apostles, the cross was a source of lifelong shame and contempt. The only solution to this enigma was the resurrection, which he calls the first act of the splendid drama of Christian history. This isn't an author just baiting you into some crazy conspiracy thinking. Masonic Christian philosophy was part of a bigger romantic view of history back in the 19th century. People didn't just want dates, they wanted meaning. So what's the significance? Well, Macoy is telling the Christian Mason that our symbols, the cross and the crown, were not always gold and shiny. They started in blood and shame. He's setting the stage for why a Knights Templar would be willing to die to protect these accessories of the faith. So how do we see it today? Well, that's up to each individual Knights Templar. Even though popular philosophy has changed, the underlying message of upholding Christian moral character can still be a solid rock to stand on. The secret discipline theory. In Chapter 2, Macoy makes his most controversial and Masonic claim regarding how the early church actually survived 300 years of Roman persecution. The claim, he says, he frankly confesses that he cannot conceive how the gospel spread without assistance of a secret brotherhood, specifically the secret discipline. He suggests the apostles worked under a quote-unquote Masonic assistance to circumvent their enemies. So what's the significance? Well, it's hard to relate to the idea that one would be persecuted for their faith and possibly killed. But in the early part of the first millennium, Christians and others faced just that. Most historians say that it was just faith that spread Christianity. Macoy says it was esotery, or secrecy. He's telling Masons today that their mysterious bond of unity is the same tool the early Christians used to survive. The third claim is the celestial sign versus the Passion Cross. In Chapter 3, Macoy spends significant time on Constantine's vision and the Labarum, the sacred standard. It's funny, his claim is that he says, he offers a special service to the Masonic historian by highlighting an error of form. which is McCoy's way of saying, look, you guys got this wrong. And it's wrong in most what he thought was modern American commanderies. And he notes that the original sign was the Chi-Rho monogram, the X and P, which you see here on this slide, and not the Passion Cross used on modern Templar flags that you saw in previous slide. So what's the significance of McCoy pointing out the special service to Masonic historians, meaning you guys were wrong? I think what he's really trying to say is that, look, if Constantine's using the X and the P, and we're using the shiny cross and crown, what are those symbols and what do they mean to you? Because we all know symbols carry all sorts of meanings. Now, let's get to the 3 actions for modern chivalry. First is to adopt the secret discipline of discretion. In Chapter 2, McCoy argues that the early church succeeded because they were wise as serpents, quote, and used a quote-unquote secret brotherhood to survive a world that wanted to, quote, stamp them out. So he's suggesting, or we're pulling from this, determine what your most important goals are to build your spiritual temple. Keep these private and only share them with people you trust. The goal is to build a mysterious bond of unity in your own life by prioritizing deep, face-to-face trust over public validation like social media posts. The second action is to guard your labarum, your standards. McCoy details how Constantine's celestial sign became a standard that scattered terror and dismay through opposing forces because it was guarded by a dedicated color guard of 50 men. From the goals that you define above, choose your 2 non-negotiable values, your personal labarum, that you will march to under this week. Sorry about that. The goal is don't just have values, guard them. Find brothers in your commandery or lodge who won't let you lower your standard when things get, as he said, calamitous. The third is seek the sealed fountain, which really is intentional study. McCoy includes a striking engraving on Solomon's sealed fountain and notes that the pathways to the Holy Land have been worn by the staves and the footsteps of pilgrims. So what he may be saying here is set aside a sealed time for study. No phones, no screen time, no television, just you and a primary source. Your goal is that understanding modern life is a lonely desert, he says, but intentional study is the living water. Like the pilgrims McCoy describes, you must put in the body-bending toil to find the authentic roots of what you believe.